what if just looking at something changes what it is?
Hmm.
It's a really disturbing idea, but also maybe the most fascinating one we could possibly talk about.
It definitely makes you think.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds on the observer effect. This
Mm.
idea that, maybe the universe actually behaves differently when we're paying attention to it.
As if our attention itself is some kind of force.
Exactly. Could it be? So let's trace this whole mind-bending concept back. It starts in quantum mechanics, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The first hints, the first real grappling with this idea that observation and reality might be linked, that really came about with the quantum pioneers. Think
Yeah.
1927,
Okay.
people like Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, they were studying the absolute smallest bits of the universe, and they ran into something completely unexpected.
Unexpected how? What was this quantum puzzle they found?
Well, they discovered that down at that tiny subatomic scale, things like electrons,
Mm-hmm.
they don't really act like predictable little billiard balls.
Right. Not like tiny marbles.
Not at all. Instead, they seem to exist in this kind of fuzzy state, a haze of probabilities, almost like waves sort of spread out across different possibilities.
Okay, so indefinite.
Indefinite, exactly. But here's the kicker. The moment you try to measure one, or even just observe it,
Uh-huh.
that whole wave of possibilities just collapses,
Mm-hmm.
and the particle suddenly snaps into one single definite location.
Wow. So it's like they're fluid, undefined, until we look, until we shine that metaphorical spotlight.
And bam, it picks a spot.
It solidifies into a specific reality. That implies that just watching isn't passive at all. It's active.
Hmm.
It's shaping what we see.
That's the core idea, yeah. And it was totally radical. I mean, classical physicists assumed everything just ticked along like clockwork,
Mm-hmm.
completely independent of us.
A detached universe.
Right. And to show just how bizarre, how counterintuitive this quantum idea was, Erwin Schrodinger came up with that famous thought experiment, the cat.
Ah, yes. Schrodinger's cat, the ultimate physics mind bender. Remind us how that goes.
Okay, so imagine a cat. It's sealed in a box,
Correct.
and inside with it, there's a tiny bit of radioactive material, a detector, and a vial of poison gas.
Rinse setup.
Very. Now, if a single atom of the radioactive stuff decays, and that's a totally random quantum event, right?
Mm.
The detector triggers, breaks the vial, and, well, the cat dies.
Okay.
But according to quantum mechanics, until someone opens the box and observes the system, that atom is in a superposition. It's both decayed and not decayed at the same time.
So it's in limbo.
Exactly. And if the atom is in limbo, then logically, so is the cat. It's simultaneously dead and alive
Until you look.
until you open the box. The act of observation forces the system, the atom, the poison, the cat, to collapse into one definite state, dead or alive, not both.
It's such a strange picture, reality just sort of hanging there undecided until we interact with it. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
It does.
Are we, just by being aware, constantly nudging the universe one way or another? And I mean, the follow-up question is almost scarier. If we're observing reality into existence, who's watching us?
That is precisely the kind of deep water this throws you into.
Hmm.
And if we jump forward quite a bit, there's this fascinating hypothetical scenario that really runs with this idea, Project Monarch.
Project Monarch sounds very classified, almost like sci-fi. What was
Yeah.
the idea behind it?
Well, imagine this is, say, 2069, a global research project. The goal is to go beyond just the quantum implications and see if this observer effect shows up on a bigger scale. Specifically, they wanted to experiment with something called entangled observation.
Entangled observation. Okay, that sounds intriguing. What did the experiments look like?
Picture people in total isolation chambers. Sensory deprivation.
Cut off from everything.
Right. And inside these chambers, you have incredibly sensitive quantum sensors monitoring particle behavior nearby. But here's the key part. These sensors, even if they're in different chambers, maybe miles apart, are linked. Quantum entanglement.
Ah, entanglement, Einstein's spooky action at a distance.
Exactly. Like if you have two entangled particles, measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. They share a destiny, kind of.
Mind-blowing stuff on its own. So what happened when these isolated people started, well, observing, focusing their attention?
The first results were pretty startling. When a subject deliberately focused their attention on a specific sensor location, the entangled particles linked to that sensor seemed to collapse out of their fuzzy wave state into a definite position much, much faster than standard quantum math predicted.
Just by thinking about it.
That was the conclusion they drew. That focused conscious attention was somehow influencing these quantum probability fields, nudging the dice, so to speak.
Wow, just directing thoughts affecting fundamental particles. That's huge.
Yeah.
But you mentioned side effects, unusual things.
Yes, and this is where it gets really weird. They started noticing, for example, that the fancy monitoring equipment itself would sometimes act up, behave erratically when the subjects were experiencing strong emotions.
Like the machines were reacting to feelings.
It seemed that way.
Mm.
And even stranger, the sensors began picking up what they termed Cree-observation shifts.
Pre-observation, like
That-
before they looked.
Almost, yeah. As if the particles were somehow anticipating being watched. They show this tiny tendency to collapse, just fractions of a second, before any conscious observation was actually logged by the system.
Okay, that's deeply strange. That hints at, I don't even know what, some kind of awareness in the system. And there were other anomalies too.
Oh, yes. Several incidents that just defied easy explanation. One sensor flat out recorded a particle collapse when no human was observing it, period.
A ghost in the machine.
You could say that.
Mm.
Another time, a high-speed camera recording data inexplicably played back a 3.4-second segment in reverse. No command given.
Okay, that's just bizarre.
And maybe the strangest.
Yeah.
One test subject, while asleep and dreaming, had this incredibly vivid dream about a very specific, unique symbol. Later, that exact symbol was found physically present inside a sealed room in the facility, a room no one had access to.
Whoa, okay, wait. Materialized? Like it just appeared.
That's how it was reported, dreamed into existence almost.
That's blurring the lines between science and, well, something else entirely. Did they have any conventional explanations? Equipment glitches? Coincidence?
They looked for all that, of course, statistical flukes, malfunctions. But the pattern, the sheer strangeness of these events, it pushed many inside Monarch to seriously consider that consciousness and reality were interacting in ways far beyond their initial theories. Was it just coincidence after coincidence, or was reality itself somehow responding?
It's a pretty chilling thought, and it sounds like they didn't stop there. They pushed even deeper, right into the brain itself.
Exactly. They figured if consciousness is the key, let's try to measure it directly at the source. So they do all these incredibly advanced light-based nanosensors.
Nanosensors in the brain.
Designed to be implanted, yeah, to track conscious intent, focused thought patterns in real time.
Wow, monitoring the mind directly? That's a massive leap. What did they learn from that?
The big finding was this. When they coordinated large groups of people, sometimes spread across continents, and had them all focus their intention on a single unified concept like peace or fear or even love, they actually measured tiny but statistically significant shifts in regional entropy.
Entropy, like the amount of disorder.
Exactly. It seemed like collective focused intention could literally create a small pocket of increased order in the physical environment it was directed towards.
So mass meditation could actually physically tidy up the universe a tiny bit. That's profound.
It's a staggering idea. And there was more. They also noticed that during moments of intense global significance, think major disasters, huge solar flares, even really pivotal elections.
Times when lots of people are focused on the same thing.
Right. During those peak moments, random number generators devices designed to be perfectly random, located on different continents, would briefly, for milliseconds, show signs of synchronicity. They become less random, generating statistically unlikely patterns simultaneously.
It's like the global consciousness, or maybe the universe itself, was hiccuping in response to these big shared moments.
That was one way they thought about it. It led them to develop this concept they called the observer grid.
The observer grid.
Yeah, the idea that maybe all consciousness on Earth is interconnected, forming this vast network, like a planetary nervous system almost.
The collective mind. And this grid concept, that played into their final biggest experiment. Right?
It did. The combination.
Yeah.
In, say, 2077, they organized something massive, 1 million participants worldwide,
1 million people.
all directed to focus their conscious attention simultaneously for 1 solid hour on a specific quantum void experiment.
Focusing on a quantum void, on nothingness itself. What were they expecting?
Who knows for sure? But what they got was, well, astonishing doesn't cover it.
What happened?
The quantum vacuum, which usually just has these tiny, fleeting fluctuations of virtual particles popping in and out, it went wild, violent instabilities.
Uh-oh.
Particles started spontaneously emerging from the empty space, way, way more than any known physics could explain.
Wow.
And the most incredible part, a coherent waveform emerged from the chaos. A clear waveform, yeah. And the researchers described it as having this distinct rhythm, something eerily similar to human brainwave patterns.
Wait, did? Did we collectively talk to the quantum field? Or maybe did it talk back? The
Yeah,
implications are just huge.
absolutely staggering, and apparently so staggering that Project Monarch was shut down quickly, quietly.
Too hot to handle, too dangerous.
The official story might say budget cuts, but the rumor was always that the findings were just too world-shattering, too potentially destabilizing to our whole picture of reality. But you know how it is. Research like that doesn't just vanish.
No, someone always keeps digging. The rogue researchers. Which brings us to Dr. Maya Elson.
Dr. Elson, yes.
Uh,
She was apparently a top theoretical physicist on the project. And she wasn't satisfied. She became convinced the observer effect wasn't just about influencing quantum events. She thought it was much better.
Bigger how?
She proposed this really radical theory, almost terrifying, some would say, that reality isn't this fixed external thing out there,
Okay.
but that it's more like a mirror.
A mirror reflecting that.
Reflecting and shaped by our expectations, our intentions, our deepest beliefs, a constant feedback loop. We shape reality with our consciousness, and that reality then shapes our consciousness right back.
A continuous cycle. Observer and observed influencing each
It's
other.
a dynamic interplay. And she wanted to test this, push it to the limit. So she set up these extreme isolation experiments on herself in a specially built chamber she called the neuromirror.
The neuromirror. Sounds intense. What did she find? What did her logs say?
Her logs reportedly document a progression into increasingly surreal territory.
Like what?
She wrote about experiencing major time distortions, seeing fleeting apparitions, sometimes resembling loved ones who had passed away,
Whoa.
finding strange cryptic symbols just appearing on the blank walls of the chamber, and perhaps most unnerving, having vivid visions of herself living out different lives in apparent alternate timelines.
Seeing other versions of herself. That's
Yeah.
crossing some serious boundaries of known reality.
It really pushes into territory that's hard to grasp. And it all seemed to build towards that final, infamous log entry.
The really chilling one.
Yeah. Her 70-second log, just a few words. I'm not observing reality anymore. It's observing me.
Goosebumps. And then
2 weeks after that entry, she vanished. Completely disappeared.
vanished from inside the neuromirror.
Vanished without a trace. The only thing found was a single digital file on her system. Unlabeled, except for the file name. Collapse.wave.
Collapse.wave. And what was on it?
According to the reports, the file contains exactly 3 minutes of pure, dead silence,
Okay.
followed by a single, barely audible whisper.
See.
Do you see it yet?
Okay, that is profoundly unsettling. A truly chilling end to her story. So, where does all this leave us now? Are these just, speculative theories from hypothetical projects and rogue scientists, or is there anything in mainstream thought that touches on this?
Well, while most of physics still operates assuming an objective reality, these ideas definitely bubble up in theoretical circles. You hear concepts like the universe being a kind of vast probability engine.
Right.
And maybe our collective consciousness acts as the tuner, subtly influencing which probabilities become actual outcomes.
Shifting the odds through belief or focus.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Others theorize that consciousness itself might not just be in the brain, but maybe it's a fundamental field, like gravity or electromagnetism. Our brains are just nodes or receivers tapping into this field.
A field of consciousness. Wow. And what about those everyday weirdnesses people experience? Deja vu, synchronicity, those little glitches.
Exactly. Those moments of uncanny coincidence, thinking of someone right before they call, that feeling of, I've been here before. Some theorists who follow this line of thinking suggest those might be like flickers, tiny stresses or ripples in this observer grid we talked about.
Little glimpses behind the curtain, maybe?
Perhaps. Fleeting hints that reality is more pliable, more interconnected with our minds than we usually assume.
It's amazing, too, how these cutting-edge, almost sci-fi ideas actually resonate with some really ancient thinking. You mentioned historical parallels.
Absolutely. The core idea, perception shaping reality, it's not brand new. Think about ancient Buddhist philosophy, concepts like form is emptiness, emptiness is form.
Implying reality arises from how we perceive it.
Precisely. Or certain Gnostic traditions that viewed the material world itself as a kind of projected illusion. Even look at dreams.
Right. In dreams, our minds create entire worlds, people, scenarios, just from thought.
Exactly. It's proof of the mind's incredible power to generate reality, at least internally, which leads to that ultimate, really provocative question.
What if waking life is basically the same kind of thing as a dream, just maybe more stable, more agreed upon collectively?
It's a profoundly paradigm-challenging thought, isn't it? And look, if any of this holds even a sliver of truth, if our awareness, our focus, our intention does actively participate in shaping the reality we experience. Then, like you said right at the start, every single moment you pay attention, every thought you hold, every belief you nurture, you're essentially casting a vote. You're contributing to what reality becomes for all of us.
That puts a lot of weight on just thinking. So turning it over to everyone listening now, have you ever felt that? That sense that the world somehow shifts depending on how you look at it? Or felt like your thoughts, your emotions maybe had a real tangible effect on things happening around you? What do you think it means if our collective focus can actually change things?
We genuinely love to hear people's experiences and thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Maybe, just maybe, the universe isn't only out there. Maybe it's in here too, in some fundamental way.
Perhaps reality isn't something we just live in.
But something we actively create with.
Yeah, a co-creation.
Well, that's definitely something to chew on. Until our next deep dive, watch carefully, believe gently.
Yeah, and maybe choose your thoughts wisely.